Hello everyone, welcome to the sixth and the last lecture of Qualcomm lecture series under NSM. Our today's speaker is Sushim Srivastava. His work domain for last 16 years at Qualcomm has been in the evolution of 3G, 4G, 5G networks. For last 4 years, he has been working on software security, compilers, and machine learning at Qualcomm. Today, he is going to talk to us about something which is very pertinent to several of us, which is on scientific writing. Over to you, Sushim.
Thanks, Rupesh, for introduction. So, why I chose this topic, we always saw that researchers having a writer's block. They could do the research, but when it comes conveying to the people, there is a block in the skills of conveying. So we wanted to tell one thing is, because although our industrial research is different than the academic research, but the block is same. Like expressing your findings has to be very effective. Otherwise, like there is no purpose of research. If research cannot be communicated to the intended audience in a proper manner, then the purpose of research is lost. So there is always a madness to research. There has been some methods which has put to the research. A lot of these inputs have come from the professors from IIT Madras also, where whom we have interacted in different sessions. So this is more or less compilation, not my, I can say not my original work. So here our goal is to remove those writer's block or give small tips to remove the writer's block. Because believe me, academic or scientific writing or academic or scientific English is non-native to even native English speakers. Leave us, because it is very different from your colloquial writing. So just before starting, like, some part of literature review also we are trying to cover. I recently learned, I assumed that this is the way to do literature review everywhere. But I recently learned that in management, psychology, social sciences, their literature review is pretty different than ours. So I will put a disclaimer also, if there are anyone from social sciences, management, or other domains other than sciences and engineering, please bear with me. This is not as much as applicable as it is applicable to us. So research is one thing which I'll say is what you have chosen is not an easy goal. It is very satisfying, but it's not an easy goal. And especially if we don't put a method to the research, well, method and research are two very, contradicting statements, but there can be some method to madness which we can put to get better results. Over the years of interacting with a lot of Qualcomm people who do the part-time researchers and the PhDs, academic research too. So few things which I have figured out is, one thing is like, consistency, daily 30 minutes morning, 30 minutes evening, or even more than that, a consistency. What I see is their life gets miserable because that consistency or daily work on your research topic is not there. And then we see them slogging over the weekend for a number of hours. And in case of research, your effectiveness reduces after you have put certain amount of hours. It's not like coursework. Like as Dr. Pratap Haridas says in his course, like if you do BTech, you cannot teach BTech. If you do MTech, you cannot teach an MTech. But when you do PhD, you are considered at the level that you can guide another PhD. So in case of research, there can be a method to madness, and consistency is one of the very, very important things. So there are a lot of work which is going on in the field of research methodology. So there are people who research on research methodology itself. So these are some excerpts from there, like how to make your literature survey a little effective, little faster. First and foremost, your goal is not to publish a paper. Your goal is not a PhD. Your goal is not to win a Nobel Prize or a Gödel Prize or a Turing Award. Your goal is to do research. You start with small incremental target. Sometime path-breaking research may happen, but don't put your goal, because this is the not last problem you are going to solve in your life. The research you are doing is just, if it is the first one, it is just a stepping stone, and the whole life you will be doing more and more researches. So don't go with very lofty goals, and start small, start incremental. Try to find a problem statement as narrow as possible, which you can solve in a finite time. If you have more time, then you can broaden that problem and go to the next step. But don't try to put very lofty goals initially. Read at least 3 papers a week. When read means is, if you can see a flow chart here, it's not the simply read, critique. Like critiquing a paper is also an art. Evaluate, follow up on it, like, that if you need any clarifications or you need to read further some topic or those things, and then go in that same loop again for the next paper. One very important thing here is, any research person is incomplete without a notebook and a pen at every point of time when they are, I'll say not even reading papers, they're doing anything. They might have to note down anything. So have a notebook and pen, and then summarize that paper. I'll come to that a little later in the next slide. We'll discuss that in detail. Traverse the paper in tree fashion. Read the papers where this paper is cited, the one which you like. Let's say Dr. Peter Carr gives a very nice methodology of reading papers. He says, first read the abstract, then go directly to the conclusion. If you like it, then come back and read the introduction, and then read results and discussion. You are still liking it, then go read the experiment and methodology. And he says that at any point of time you think that it is not suitable for you, move on, because your time is limited. So once you have found a paper which you have liked from all the aspects, you can read where this paper is cited. You can read references listed for this paper. And again, while reading those papers, you can again follow the same methodology. Read the abstract, read the conclusion. If you like it, then read the introduction, read results and discussion. Still like it, then go read experiment and methodology part. So traversing the paper in tree fashion is very important. Follow academicians, researchers on different way. ResearchGate or Mendeley has stopped their feed service now. Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. I forgot one of the researchers I recently saw. They explained a very nice paper in 3 minutes. It was on something on neural. I forgot the paper, but it was a very nice explanation. So follow the researchers. You might get some inputs from there, what you want to read, the keywords. And this is not the last problem you will solve in your life. If you are stuck, move on to some other problem. We'll come back to this statement a little while again on the next paper. But always, don't get in the stuck phase for longer. Start reading something else. We'll come to what something else and how we'll come up to something else. Start with the survey papers in the area of interest. That will give you a direction that is that your really area of interest. Is that what you want to do? So this is like, start an academic blog. Write summary, your views on each paper you read. Make a note, that notebook and the pen I was talking about. So why this academic blog? First thing, this is where the biggest problem of researchers are. When they have findings or something, putting those findings in writing, putting out a research paper, there is a lot of block in writing those paragraphs. If you start writing these academic blogs, your scientific writing practice will slowly start. What you can do is, you can write those, a summary of paper, 1 line in the blog, and then a couple of lines, then key findings, a couple of lines. What were the dependent, independent variables, if there are any in their experimentation? What was the experiment, a small part, and what is they left for the future research, or open items or limitations. So you can make this summary and your own view, a couple of lines conclusion at the end. It should not be a copy paste. You try to paraphrase, write it in your own English, your own language, so that you develop that writing skills while you are reading the paper, so that the day when you have to write your own paper and submit it, then it is very easy for you. Another very important, you can say, use of this academic blog is, suppose you are traversing a problem statement in a certain direction and you keep reading papers, and at a certain point you feel that is a dead end. Then you can retrace back to some point, looking at the previous papers you have read, that which direction you can take from here. So this writing gives you a fallback option when your one of the direction or one of your research directions have hit a dead end. So start an academic blog, publicize it in your circle, in your peer group, in your friends, everywhere, because their critical comments will help. Present papers you have read to the peer group, even speaking, making the slides, comprehending a paper, telling it to the peer group. When the peer group asks questions to you, that also develops your skills for scientific writing. So present the papers you have read to the peer group. It is a very good exercise. This is a two-edged sword. Set a committed. That's why committed is a red, bold, font size 36, underlined, italics, peer group of weekly, fortnightly discussing papers you have read. Why I have said it is a dual-edged sword? Because what happens is, if your peer group, rather than being committed, is the guys who are pulling you down or not very serious about it, it can take you in a very different direction. And so if you have a committed peer group, which can, like, 1 week you present, another week they present, and that's how each other, critiquing each other, you guys move forward. Also the cross pollination of idea happens. It is a very, very important thing in the journey of a researcher, if they can get a very good peer group. Put time on your calendar for paper reading, like or your research, because this is not only my views. Like a lot of professors with whom we have a informal discussion, we have heard that PhD students, like 3-4 days slacking around, and on the weekend they are trying to put an all-nighter and all those. Believe me, in research all-nighters doesn't work. In coursework they might, but in research they don't work. So try to put consistent timing. To publish the first paper in A-star journal, assume at least you have to read 100-150 papers. After first publication, it becomes slightly easier. But this 100-150 is, I will not say it is if you ask me any literature review or literature is there on giving this number, it's not there. This is in general, in my discussion with different professors. I heard Dr. Balraman Ravindran saying it in one of the PhD Ask Me Anythings. So I picked this number from there. But in my belief also, 100 and 150 should be the right number to get to your problem statement.
Sushim?
Yeah.
There is a question in the chat box. Aditya is asking, what in your opinion is more important, the peer group or the advisor? Oh,
advisor is God. In my view, see, this is not from my own experience. I have so many professors have talked to this about their advisors. Like I'm again not remembering the name, but if I am right, he was someone from IIT Delhi, the professor, and he was telling me he'll prepare for 3 days what he will tell his guide or advisor and what he or she has done, and then the guide will, in 90 seconds, before he starts and speaks for 90 seconds, gets the thing and gives him the next direction. And sometimes he feels, man, why I put up so much of hard work? But guides or the advisor that's why the name guide. They have done this for very long, and they know which direction you have to steer on. And again, with the discussions from multiple people who have done their PhDs, I have seen is you will find a different kind of guide. Some are very, very involved. You come and they'll say, read these 10 papers and this 11th paper, reproduce the results in the lab. Some will, will be in the little leaving it on you. So you get used to your advisor style, and advisor is extremely important. I'll say that in my view, I will not say demeaning the peer group, but advisor is more important than peer group. Peer group may be a few inches lesser. They have their own, both of them have their own importances. Does this answer the question, Aditya? Purely my personal views, yeah. Shall I move ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So when you have found the problem statement, at this point, even before your problem defense, run it through a commoner. In commoner means commoner means a common person, because there is a lot more specificity in the sciences than social sciences or other stream. Suppose you are doing a research in program analysis. Take your problem statement, explain it to a machine learning guy, explain it to metallurgy guy, explain it to chemical guy, explain it to algorithms guy, and see if they are able to understand with your very minimal effort. You need not have to pull out slides and all. They should say, yeah, I understand the problem statement. Whether this problem statement is for MS for research or a paper or your PhD, but someone not from your own specific domain should be able to understand the problem statement. So now we'll move on to the scientific writing specifically. So write while you experiment. Write your views, whatever is coming to your mind in your notebook, in your notes while you are experimenting, because at the later point in time when you're writing your paper, you might not be able to recollect your thoughts. Remember, this is not your paper. These are just your thoughts, and these are going to help you a lot when you are putting that as your paper. So while you experiment, even some things you might feel that it is redundant or might not required, but put your thoughts down on the paper, or nowadays the new generation, maybe the electronically, take your notes. So this is the first step in scientific writing. So when you start writing your paper or your problem statement defense, research proposal, or any of those writings, look at the manuscript requirement. Write in 1/8 to 1/5 of the word limit describing what your paper is about. What I mean here is this is not abstract. Write all the sections, like your introduction, your experiment, your results and discussion, your conclusion, limitations, future research work. Try to write it in the 1/8 to 1/5 of the word limit, like an essay. This should cover all the sections. And believe me, if this goes wrong, the whole paper will go wrong. Spend a good time here. This will ease off a lot of your effort, because from here, you have to just zoom in and blow out each part in a further details. So spend a good time here. This is very, very important. This is, surprisingly, this method, I got it from a person I was always surprised. He does not follow any of those write while experimenting and all those process, and shuts down over a weekend for 2 days and gets the paper out after all the work done. But it doesn't happen with everyone. And in his opinion, this is one of the most important part in scientific writing. If you get this right, blowing up to a full-sized paper as per the manuscript requirement is very, very easy. So this is not abstract. This is not your paper. This is a summary of it, including all the sections. Once you are done with this, the next thing you should do is check the journal's manuscript requirements in detail. Because nowadays there is a lot of this supplementary online material things have come up, and the word limits have been reduced to quite an extent. So read the requirements and then start. Papers are always written in past tense. Just get started. Don't procrastinate over it for a longer time. Editing should always be done later. Finish your first draft quickly. This is like, very important point. I'll come to this why. Create an outline when you start. Outline means like sections, subsections, your map of what you're gonna write. Why I said finish your first draft quickly, the biggest graveyard for a research paper when you're writing a research paper is introduction. Do not write introduction now. I have seen multiple incidences where people start with introduction and they just go on with introduction and consume the whole manuscript requirement, the word limit in the introduction itself. So do not write the introduction now. Begin with the data experiment part. First write this part. Now write results and discussion. Write the conclusion next. Do the first editing now. No need to even write abstract at first. Start with data and experiment. And again, I will repeat the same point that introduction is the biggest graveyard for research writers. They just spend too much time. They start assuming maybe the reader doesn't know this also, maybe the reader doesn't know this also, and the introduction just keep flowing in a lot of words. And after writing the data experiment part, results and discussion, conclusion, do your first edit now. I will have a separate slide on editing towards the end or revising the paper. There is an algorithm there too to make it faster and make it more accurate. We'll go through that later. After you have done with the first edit, now write the introduction and start with your last paragraph of introduction where you are, concluding into your research, putting your moot point, why the study was done, why this research is required. Write that paragraph first and then write the remaining paragraphs of the introduction. Don't start from the first paragraph of the introduction. Then list references, write abstract, write keywords, do edits again, peer review, edit again. So now let's, after this process, let me delve into a little bit into each of the sections. Example of the title. Try to keep the title concise, simple, which conveys your, the whole meaning rather than going on and on and on. You need not explain what you have done in the title itself. And title should be catchy enough for a reader so that they should read your paper. Abstract is the concise summary of paper, and that every reader will first read your abstract. So make sure that you explain, abstract properly. What makes your paper unique is the significant amount of new information you are bringing in, and a proper conclusion in the abstract itself, so that they know what are they expecting from the paper. In case of introduction, cover background, purpose, question, hypothesis, again written in past tense. You also cover a big picture, prior art, what already exists, gap, your moot point, like what you are trying to, why this study was done. And this whole introduction is to the point. Remember, we are not into writing fiction, so we need not build a huge plot. Like in introduction, as I said multiple times, the common mistake is people start explaining more and more and more about the background or the background technology, assuming that reader doesn't know. brief introduction and get to the point. Get to, like, why this research was done, your moot point. Method, of course, is written in the past tense, and anybody should be able to replicate by reading your method. Nowadays, again, the concept of papers with code and attaching the code and all those things have come in. But let's say you are not a computer science student, you are from other domain where you cannot attach your code exactly. There should be explanation so that any researcher should be able to replicate your method by reading your method section. Detailed results and date, like when you achieve that, the chronology is sometimes important because somebody else might be doing a similar work somewhere else. Graphically, if you are able to represent the result, it is good, because, and without any alteration, don't alter any data assumption, because it's easy for reader to understand graphically. Also remember, results are not same as discussion. Here, what you have got results from your experiments, you are just putting those as it is. Be precise, use accurate numbers, don't be fuzzy. Any ambiguity or assumption, if you have taken any assumption, mention it there in the results before that number where you have done your approximation or there were some assumptions involved. In discussion, interpret results and conclude. Any shortcomings, limitation, discuss there, that what you are not able to do, and from here how the research can be taken forward, the future scope of this research. And also remember, if there is no evidence to support either choices, remain neutral. Your inference should be backed by proof. In sciences, your opinion doesn't matter unless there is an evidence for it.
Sushim?
Yeah.
There is a question from Nikhil in the chat box. It's a little long. I don't know if you would like to read it yourself.
I will have to switch the window. I'll just switch the window and read. Yeah. I will. True, Nikhil. What you said is right in some of the contexts. Sciences, I have seen most of the papers, in my view, were in the past tense, but there can be situation where they can be in present tense. In that case, what happens is consistency matters. Like, for example, there is another thing which is said in paper writing. If you don't mix the tenses, don't mix the person, don't mix the voice. So what you are saying is true. There are some places where it can be in other tenses, but then you have to make sure that you are not mixing the tenses in the same context. Also, when this point has come in, there is another tip there. You don't mix the persons also. Let's say you are writing in third person, then you continue in third person in that particular context. And similarly in the voice, if you are preferred is always active voice, but even if sometimes you have to use passive voice, you continue in the same. The reason is active voice is because actors are first in active voice, and the reader should get easily which is the actor and what is being acted upon. So what you say, Nikhil, is true. There are some cases where there can be present tense, but there the advice is don't mix it.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, these are some tips which again have been collected for a lot of people mentioned in the acknowledgement out here. So your paper should be easy to understand. Ask yourself if someone from your paper's broad field, but not from the same field, will be able to understand. For example, whether another computer science person from program analysis field will be able to understand your ML paper or not. Is the flow of your paper correct? So there is a trick or a tip here. What is suggested by a lot of folks is read your paper paragraph wise in a backward fashion. After writing last paragraph, then previous paragraph, then previous paragraph, and see if the cohesiveness or continuity is coming in. So is the flow of your paper correct? Each section should be logically in sequence, because consistency, there is a lot of problem in research, because you work over a year, couple of years, in case of PhD 4-5 years. So what you were thinking 5 years back, 3 years back, 4 years back has to be consistent. Your writing style, what you have written 2 years back, has to be consistent. So always check for the flow. So consistency matters. So this is one of the tips, like read it backwards paragraph wise, and see if your flow still looks correct. Write small pieces. Don't try to write the whole paper at once. As I said, though I know personally few people who can finish a paper over the weekend after doing all the work, but most of the folks, it take time. So write small pieces. Ask someone else to read it aloud to you, and you listen to it and see that if it is sounding coherent. Try editing text which something you have written some time back. So this is for your developing your editing skills a step, like your style changes, the way you write changes, your research work, the stage of research changes, your view about the topic changes. So try to edit the text after some time you have written it. You might get, this may be changed, or I should, do this better. Why I have written this paragraph? So you might get those questions. So try editing your work after some time. Try editing someone else's work in your peer group. Try reading it. Try giving critical comments out there, how they can make it more readable, more understandable. That is also a very good way to develop your scientific writing skills. One was, I said, very effective way is academic blog. I will rate this one second, trying editing someone else's work to improve your scientific writing skills. So try editing someone else's work and try giving those review comments to them and see how it goes. For your graphics and your figures, your tables, hand draw that figure, then hand it over to a colleague or a peer. Ask if she gets the message within 30 seconds. If they are not getting in 30 seconds, redo it, because that is the time your reader will also spend on your graphics or your images, your figure. So hand draw it, rough hand draw it quickly. It should not be your Visio and awesome drawing, because it's there for serving the purpose of whether they are able to understand your figure or not, your drawing or not, and hand it over to your peer. If they cannot understand in 30 seconds, just redo it. Yeah, choose the time when your writing brain works most. For someone it's morning, for someone it's night. So see what works for you. Maintain bibliography of papers you read, which will be useful for citation and references. Nowadays, there are very good tools like Mendeley, Zotero. I prefer EndNote, but it's everyone's personal choice. RefWorks. Mendeley, one thing which they have stopped the service, though I'm not using Mendeley for referencing, but I like that tool in a certain senses. If you import your papers into the library in Mendeley, earlier your feed will show related papers automatically and it will refine over the time. But now they have stopped the feed service, but they still send the email once a week based on the paper you have added to your project, that you might be interested in reading this one too. So it's in that sense, it gives you a very good literature on your topic and keeps suggesting which you might have missed in your searching. Never copy paste anything. You'll be caught in plagiarism check and paper will be rejected. Believe me, like, this is the biggest sin what you can do. You paraphrase in your own language, and even if a plagiarism software is not catching it, still don't do that, because there are incidences where papers have been pulled after getting published, and that is very, very embarrassing. So always do plagiarism check and avoid as much as you can. Introduce acronym before using it. The first time you introduce, and then you can use the acronym. Same acronym should be used throughout, like kg versus kilogram. Keep the format consistent, non-aligned versus non-aligned. Like if you're using hyphenated, use hyphenated. If you're not using hyphenated, don't use hyphenated. So I have no qualms in saying I'm biggest fan of Leslie Lampert, and his works are awesome. So read that, how to write proofs, how to present a paper. These two works are awesome for every researcher to read. And though Dr. Royce Murray is from chemistry, but his paper, Skillful Writing of an Awful Research Paper, this paper is awesome. He has given 7 mistakes which researchers do, and he's so spot on. So you can read those these as references. Also read diverse thoughts, because diverse thoughts and discuss the diverse views, because your views which are similar to your views will not help you to find the problem statement. Because if everyone is talking the same thing and you are not getting the diverse views, then you will not be able to find the problem statement. Don't discuss things who are thinking alike and who are agreeing with your views. Find the people who contradict you. Look at interdisciplinary topics. Nowadays, the topics are getting more complexer than ever. There are so many examples like that, which, for example, we never thought of, like somebody will use halide for machine learning, but then we found later some universities are using it. So there are, halide was purely written from, programming languages and the compiler perspective. And then this came in the ML domain. Some work, we saw some papers in Chinese universities. Review your progress every week and be critical of yourself. Don't be harsh, but be critical on yourself. And because if you have not been consistent, which is one of the very important things for scientific writing, that you have not done it every day, then it will be tough for maintaining the consistency in your writing style. So review your work, your progress every week. What that I mean is not what you have written. What I mean here is review your progress in the sense of how much you have read, what work you have done, were you consistent, and be critical of yourself. So now one of the very important slides which I like is revising, because this can get your whole paper in order, even if you did a lot of mistakes during writing, despite of following all those steps. So while revising, you have to ask these questions, you have to discuss these in detail. Like, for example, one point while revising the paper is overall cohesiveness. Is each paragraph in your paper is conveying your main point? Does your introduction clearly state the main point of your paper? Does each paragraph stay in line with your topic? It's extremely important. Like, you cannot digress. If any paragraph is digressing or talking something totally unrelated, cut it out, edit. Does your conclusion arrive at the main goal? So what you stated as a moot point in introduction, is your conclusion aligning with it? Read paper backwards, paragraph wise. Each paragraph, one by one, reverse, and see your overall cohesiveness is there, consistency is there or not. Multiple ideas in a paragraph, break that paragraph in multiple paragraphs. Don't keep multiple ideas in one paragraph. Now, after that, cohesiveness of the paragraph. Each paragraph should refer to the primary theme, and it should be connected to the previous and the next paragraph. And the message from each paragraph, then you should look at the next. Main topic should be around somewhere in first few sentences. You should refer it to the main topic or your moot point. Look at if paragraph is too short, then you need to explain a little bit. If the paragraph is too big, then break it in multiple paragraphs. Look at the transitions. Transitions, what I mean is from paragraph to paragraph, sentence to sentence, section to section, there should be continuity. And each paragraph should have only one main point. Another, pitfall is too much citations. Not too long citations. Also, when you cite a text or cite a work, there is a habit of, putting it like an information bulleted point. You need to, build some context to it, why that paper was there, why you read that paper, and what you inferred from that paper, and moving to the next citation or the next literature review paper, you should maintain a continuity and do the same for each one what you are discussing, and make sure that citations are not too long, and transitions from the cited text is coherent, consistent, why the text is cited, what is cited, and then go back to the topic. And from when you're explaining the prior art, it should not look like you are listing the prior researches as bulleted items. There should be a continuity in putting those prior researches, interpretation which you have put in the prior art section or an introduction section of yours. Now look at the sentence correctness. Your spell check or grammar check might do the syntactic check, but the semantic, whether what it wanted to convey, is it conveying the same thing? Then do the spelling. Spelling and spell check are different because many times homonyms there and there, we do a mistake, but your spell check will give it as a correct. So do a manual, the spelling check, then run a spell check, and then read it aloud. So this one, you may do a few iterations and you might get your paper right. After the final manuscript, after your revising is done, ask a colleague who has not worked in the project to review the paper. Ask a subject matter expert for technical review. Edit again for clarity if there are any comments. Proofread again for grammatical errors. Delete the extraneous contents. And iterate on the review comments which you got from your colleagues to refine the content, colleagues and subject matter expert, and obviously your advisor and the guide. So this is after the final manuscript. Read it aloud. That's ask someone else to read it aloud to you. Some tools: Mendeley, Zotero, EndNote, RefWorks for your citation management. I use EndNote, but I use Mendeley for the purpose of, it suggests the related papers. Similarly, in ResearchGate, if that paper is there, it suggests you research the related research papers. I miss the Arwix here. And Google Scholar, again, the similar research paper it suggests while you are doing the literature survey. So, and follow the researchers on different social media. Make use of the social media in a little better manner and see if it helps you in finding your problem statement and improving your literature review and scientific writing skills. And this we can have or skip, but this is like not at office. If you are describing a technical issue, so this is a bonus one. Assume the person reading your email has no background. You really don't know who gets added to emails nowadays, threads, and where your email will get forwarded. Assume they have only 1 minute or less to get detuned. Start logically. What is the problem and what is not working in single line? How the issue manifests, like when it goes wrong, what it shows as an error. Possible solution, again, one liner if you have it. root cause, again one liner if identified, and then you do the detailed explanation of these points. Those who are still interested, who are more vested in the issue, they will read, and they would like to deep dive. Otherwise, they'll read the first 3 lines and move on. So this is it. I think so. Acknowledgements. I may have missed so many names here whom I have heard a lot about, informal discussions, so many PhD candidates whom I have talked, and so many professors I have talked on this from different domain. So I might have missed the acknowledgements. I'm sorry for that, but yeah, these are all whom I remembered. Some references out here. That's it. Any questions?
Thanks a lot, Sushim. I think this was a very interesting talk from that perspective, and touched upon a lot of interesting aspects of both the literature survey as well as paper writing. So over to you, audience. Anybody wants to ask any questions? I think this is a very open-ended topic, I would say. So we can shoot those questions at Sushim. Let's see how he reacts.
Yeah, please go ahead. I'm not the expert, and here I would like to recommend to everyone, for researchers especially, the NPTEL course of Dr. Pratap Haridas. Please go and watch it. It is time consuming, but it is awesome. Any questions?
Yes. Hi, sir.
Go ahead. No, sir, Aditya. Yeah, go by Sushim. Yeah.
Hi, Sajim. So I wanted to ask you, okay, let's say that someone starts their PhD, and as a young student, you don't really know what is going to be. I mean, when you graduate out of PhD, you have option to go to academia, you have option to go to industry, but you don't start a PhD by thinking, okay, I will go to industry or academia, right? So how do you figure out, okay, maybe I should take an example. Maybe I'm getting lost here. So let's say that someone started his PhD in 2007, okay? Now, he would be expected to graduate in 2012, 2013. But what was the hot topic in 2012 or 2013 if you look back? That was machine learning, that was deep learning, because AlexNet had recently come out and people had realized that, okay, now you can use deep learning for many things. But that person never knew what was going to come in 2012, right? That person who started his PhD in 2007, he started from completely different field. So in 2012, universities are no longer looking for what he started with. Universities are now looking for deep learning people. Universities are now looking for machine learning professors. So how do you find high impact fields which are actually going to be relevant in future?
Somehow I will partially agree, and I'll also ask Rupesh to add his input out here. I don't personally believe that universities might not look for other areas. I'll tell you the reason. Rather, I have seen I'll tell from an industry perspective. Rather, I have seen in this hot topic, there is too much supply of talent. And then what happens is, for example, I will be very open to tell here, I struggle to hire compiler engineers, and not only me, all my contemporaries in other companies, they struggle to hire compiler engineers. But when it comes to hire machine learning or deep learning guys, there is enough talent pool available. So somehow, because of this, a topic becoming hot, the supply and demand tilts such a way that there is demand of the systems engineering or the previous the other subjects as much as there is a demand for the new one. This is my personal view. I'll ask Rupesh to add here.
Yeah, I think I would rather agree with the part that universities do have sometimes preferences, especially with respect to areas, because that particular area is already full in that department, not because that is not or no longer a very interesting area, but primarily because there are enough faculty members in that department, or in, let's say, even in the industry case. But more importantly, during the interviews, what we look at is the overall potential of the person. So it's not that, for example, let's say I joined, I was probably working on something, but after 10 years, I'm likely to be working on something else. After 20 years, it's going to be something else. So what the institute is going to look at is the overall potential, whether this person will be able to be a reasonable researcher overall, let's say in the career of 30, 40 years. So, but yeah, that original question that you asked, Aditya, it's a difficult one, that how do I assess or guess what, or predict how the after 5 years or 6 years, what's going to happen, which area is going to be more interesting or niche. I mean, that's a little difficult problem.
Yeah, and also I'll just add on the Rupesh's point here that similarly, like my example itself, I started as an embedded layer 1 engineer, coding the layer 1 code in C and assembly, and now I am doing compiler engineering and software security. So similarly, the way universities look at your potential, similarly even industry looks at your potential in much broader perspective.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. This was really, really great.
And also, Aditya, you had one more point, like how to decide between industry and academic. That question, I don't have the answer because it's a very, very tough answer, and we face it multiple times when we are interviewing PhD candidates. They're always in a dilemma. Is it good to come to Qualcomm or good to pursue academic? There is no standard answer. But one thing is, if you are looking for a research, pure research, which may not generate any revenue, then you might want to stay in academic, because academic research doesn't put a pressure on an engineer to generate revenue from the research in a time-bound format. But in case of industry, your research after certain time has to generate revenue.
But sir, how would that person find funding in academia if his research is it's not going to generate anything, right? Even to find funding is very hard.
But in industry, it will be much harder for something which chances of revenue are very remote.
Yeah, that is true.
Academia might fund a theoretical research, but industry may not.
Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot.
I'm sure the other researchers here will have some points to add. Please feel free. The floor is open.
Yeah, this is an open floor, because there are, in field of research, as Rupesh said, like sometimes the new guys have better view than people who have been in the field, and their vision has narrowed down.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I have a question that if I have an idea, but it can be similar as the information given in the research paper. So how I will balance the same thoughts in my paper?
So what you're saying is your idea or your problem statement has been already done by someone?
Sir, not that similar. Like they have same topics. So I am a MTech student.
So I think Rupesh can also add after this one. So in my view, like, see, there can be a similar paper already, but if you are doing improvement in your experiment, you are showing, let's say, better benchmarks with your work, you are improving certain benchmarks with your work, you are showing a performance improvement, or let's say you're doing some work in compiler, you show memory size improvements better than what was done in the last one. You can as well take the same topic and work on. There is no problem in it if you are able to show an improvement over the work done earlier. Right, Rupesh?
Yeah, and I'll add, since Devangana mentioned that she is an MTech student, I'll also add that for MTech students, typically, it is all right to do a completely implementation based project which need not result in something new. Even if you implement any existing paper, that is still okay, and that can still be part of your MTech project report. And to add further to that, some of the conferences, for example, ISTA, these conferences do allow reproducibility results as research results, which means that you take existing papers which are typically high impact, and you and probably it was done in a proprietary manner, or all the results are not available, or the benchmarks were different, the system setup was different. You try to reproduce those results in a different setup with different set of benchmarks. You understand whether things work, which things don't work, and possibly make the implementation as well as benchmarks available for the research community. This itself can also be constituted as a research paper. So this is very interesting, quite encouraging for several even MTech students as well as other people, BTech students, who may not always do a new research.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, there is one more question, if you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, how do I mean, sometimes I feel that industry tends to focus on revenue, and that is perfectly right. I mean, we have to focus on revenue, but doesn't it sometimes pigeonhole people? For example, if I'm working in X field, my team is working in X, everything is great, but I'm not getting the chance to explore Y, which is related to X. I mean, right? It feels like
So, okay.
there's a bit of pigeonholing.
Yeah, so there Aditya is varied in this, even in the same company, from leader to leader. And what happens is some people have high risk taking capability. For example, in case of Qualcomm itself, when we pursued, especially in our compiler team, we always pick up, if we see any promising work in academia, or research work, we always pick it up on the industry side and try to see if it can go commercial. For example, the time we picked the polyhedral compilation or halide, the whole world thought it is just an academic exercise. Rather, when we had already launched few devices with halide and we were doing roadshow in China, the folks like who are who are the top research scientists of some companies, they're saying, "Oh, we thought halide is academic." So it depends from company to company, and within the company, leader to leader, how much risk they want to play on a new thing. And if there is some collateral loss doing that, like let's say we will pick up 5 things from academia to make it commercial. One will work, 4 might not work, 2 may work, 3 may not work. But that's the risk-taking capability of that particular leader.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is regarding reading papers. So how do we develop our critiquing skills? Like when I read a paper, I can see what they do, but to find out what they don't do or what they do wrong, that takes quite some effort. Do you have any tips in that respect?
So there are some papers on critiquing the paper itself. So if you are not, if you don't know yet, there is a domain like when this NPTEL course, which is there in research methodology, there are folks who research in research methodology. So you can find papers on how to critique a paper. I have few papers. I'm not sure how I will be able to send, or probably I will, where this video is posted, what I will do is I will put the paper link as a comment out there. But there are papers or literature available on how to critique a paper. And obviously you can look at your guide, the senior professors in your institute. They have done this for a long while. Ask your advisor how to critique a paper. Ask another professor how to critique a paper. They will have like different styles of critiquing paper, and build your style based on learning from the experienced folks. That answers?
Yes, sure, thanks.
All right, any other questions?
Hello, good morning, sir.
Go ahead.
Good evening, sorry. Apart.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I just want to ask that can you tell us a little the steps for finding a research gap in the papers?
That was the second slide. Read, read, read,
Yeah,
read, read. So you have to focus on your and again your advisor might have a different style. But what I have learned from most of the folks, the commonest thing is whatever papers you are reading, look at their research gap, look at their what they have mentioned in the future research area, look at their limitations.
yeah.
So that is the best method to go. I think Rupesh can add, like, if his style is slightly different or same.
No, I think it's almost the same. One of the things that helps is, like Sushim was mentioning, when we read the papers, I mean, so let's say we read paper X and we want to identify what are the gaps in X. Think on your own whether you are able to do that. And initially you might not be able to do, but when you read Y, which is referring to X, typically Y will tell what exactly is missing in X and what they are improving upon.
Yeah.
So that is your learning point. And then look at the other papers. Even Y will have some limitations and so on. So this is how you start then understanding how other people are viewing this particular problem. Maybe you have not looked at that dimension at all. But slowly, as Sushim mentioned, as you keep reading, your understanding of that domain improves and you are able to start finding the gaps.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. So it's time. Chandra has a question.
Hello, sir. I have a question because in the compiler, even in academics, so there are less number of people working on compiler. But what kind of work we can do as a academician in compilers? Could you give some suggestions on that direction?
Chandra, I will say rather it is easier for you because less people are working, so you need to follow lesser number of people's work. So you can the way I said, follow the researchers, and some are very active on the social media, some are not. Those who are active on social media, you can follow them on social media. Those who are not, look at their work on ResearchGate or the different other paper services like Google Scholar and that Arxwix of the Cornell, and then start following their work. I think you will be able to write a filter on their new paper when it comes in. It pops up in you as a notification and all those things. So it is easier for those domains where there are lesser researchers to follow the researchers rather than where there are too many, because in the case of too many, you really don't know who is doing quality work and who is not. So follow the researchers. Follow the researchers.
Sir, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, then we come to the end of not only Sushim's talk, but also Qualcomm lecture series. I'm really happy that Sushim and his team, Ravi, Arun, Avnish, all of them really came forward and gave these nice lectures on various topics related to compilers, HPC, and in this case, more on scientific writing. We are really thankful to the Qualcomm team for all these efforts that they have put in and educating us on various topics. And I look forward to that there will be more such opportunities for us to collaborate as well as discuss further things. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Rupesh. Thanks a lot, all the audience. And thanks a lot for giving us this chance, because it is always refreshing to connect with academia, and the questions which are asked there gives us chance to retrospect and look into our own work, that how can we do better.
Great, our pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.